Buddy, welcome back to another edition of the Breakdown. Had a couple days off with travel for work this week, but had to come back with a bang in two ways. Number one, we got 11 games today, so a ton to get through. And number two, Sam's back with me from the source, which is always a ton of fun. How you doing today, Sam?
I am doing very well. I'm very happy to be back here as always. Got a little bit of a late start of the slate, which is why we didn't start at our designated 12:30. That's on me. But we still got until I think 7 o'clock till the game starts. So I'm sure there's a lot of guys to be ruled out and screw us over in the meantime.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought you were going to say it's going to take us till 7 o'clock to talk
It
through all these
also might
games,
take us
but
until 7 o'clock. I'm not denying that by any
yeah.
means.
I know it is every day. I'm watching on Twitter the news come through on different people while we're like getting ready to do this. So anyway, we'll give it our best shot. And as always with the NBA, you got to pivot as news comes in. So
Absolutely.
all right. Well, we got a bunch, so we're going to jump into it here. First up, we got the Hawks on a back-to-back going to the Magic. Atlanta -6, 229.5. What do you got here, man?
Yeah, this is one of those games that I was telling you about beforehand that I'm very okay with staying away from. I do have some numbers in front of me. 6 of Orlando's last 8 games, they've lost by double digits, or the 6 of the 8 games that they've lost in their last 8 losses have been by double digits. Sorry, that was a little bit of a mouthful. Atlanta's had offensive struggles lately, but they were all against top 5 defenses. They just put up 124 on the Cavs defense last night, which is number 4 since January 1st. But in 8 games on 3 game and 4 days stretches on the back end of a back-to-back, Atlanta's only won 2. So that's very concerning. They're also very bad at rebounding on no days of rest. They give up, this is Atlanta, they give up 41% shooting from 3-point range on no rest, which is worse in the league, and they force the second least turnovers. I'm also having concerns about them resting guys like Trae Young and John Collins, who is dealing with an injury, so he's questionable. Trae Young's not questionable yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if, on the back end of this 3 and 4 back-to-back with Trae Young going into the All-Star break and kind of the team ailing a little bit, they might just want to be on the cautious side. Orlando's also had a really tough strength of schedule lately, which makes it very hard for them to evaluate them rather. Atlanta's 9-18 against the spread on the road this season, 3-6 against the spread on as road favorites, and Orlando's actually 6-6 against the spread in divisional games. There's a lot of public money coming in on Atlanta, but the line isn't moving much, which also concerns me. There's a little bit of reverse line movement there. So yeah, this is a game where I don't really have an angle, and I'm very okay with not having an angle because I don't have any real motivation to bet this number at 6 on either side.
Yep. Yeah, I feel kind of the same way. This is one where I agree. You can kind of see things that are pushing both ways. With Orlando, I feel like they're a little, you said this, but they're hard to get a read on because they're really kind of up and down and back and forth offensively, especially. There's not a lot of consistency. They have been better on the road in their last 15, 110.3 points a game on the road, 104.5 at home. Field goal percentage is about the same. 3-point percentage, though, 6.5 points lower at home than on the road in the last 15, and offensive rating 5 points lower. They have been playing kind of fast, actually, in their last 15. They've had a pace of 102, which surprised me when I saw that. I don't think of them playing over 100 for the most part. So it hasn't necessarily resulted in a ton more scoring, but it does seem like they've been playing a little faster. They're giving up a lot of points. I mean, they held Portland and Detroit down, but other than that, it's been like 114 plus.
They held down G League Ignite. Good for them.
Yeah, exactly.
Good for them.
And that's where I'm saying, like, you toss those games out. This is a team that does give up points. I did say too, I got to find where I had it. You talked about Atlanta against good defenses. So in games not against Dallas or Boston is the way I wrote it. 124, 121, 133, 114, 124. You get the picture. Like, Atlanta's been up around 120 most of the time, not against Dallas or Boston.
And that really speaks to Dallas and Boston as well, because last night I actually had Cleveland, and I was like, well, they struggled against other top 5 defenses. Yep. This is a top 5 defense.
Yep.
It's clear that those two are just upper echelon right now.
We were the same, man. I was on Cleveland there as well, and it didn't quite turn out, but
no.
Almost exactly. I will say the Hawks are 3-7 against the spread in their last 10 games on 0 days of rest. So on those back-to-backs, I think you already said 1-6 in their last 7 road games. Magic are 5-1 against the spread in their last 6, playing on 1 days of rest. So more recently, they've been pretty good in that spot. All that said, I've started trying to put a line on these games too. And when I did it before I looked at the line, I made it -5 for Atlanta. So
Yeah.
it's like right there. And I was initially looking at the total too. I think this is just a tough game because we don't know all of who will be playing. I have mild interest in the under here, actually, because Orlando has tended to play lower scoring games at home than on the road. So I haven't bet that, but that's the only other thing I'm looking at.
Yeah, makes sense. I have no desire on this game to really like.
I can't talk you into something.
No, really not. I mean, maybe like, I don't know, maybe like the team under on Atlanta, I'd be interested in. See what that's at, because I can imagine this being a lower scoring game and the under is a path I can see happening, but I don't know much else. I mean, there's so many other games on the slate that I just have no real desire to push.
With you, man. So let's move on to the next one then. Might be another. Well, you might have interest in this game. I don't know how many people will, but Nets at Knicks. Knicks -4.5.
Why are we favored?
Because it's the Nets, dude.
It's the Knicks, dude. It's the same thing. It's worse, actually.
Talk me into it then, man, because I don't have much faith in either of these teams right now.
This is another game that I wouldn't expect many people to have money on one or the other side. The Nets have won each of the last 4 matchups between these two, but that's not really indicative of anything, considering that none of the same guys are playing for the Nets, and none of those wins have been by more than 7 points. 2 of those games were by a single bucket. So, Kevin Durant obviously makes that difference. So does Kyrie Irving. The Knicks really need this win. I mean, I don't know if you've seen what's happened in the past couple of days. It's been really tough. The 23-point lead blown to Portland.
Ooh, that was rough.
The 11-point lead blown to Oklahoma City. Still not as bad, but it's Oklahoma City without Shai or Dort.
Yep.
Tom Thibodeau is a terrorist for leaving RJ Barrett in that game against Denver with down 20 with the scrubs and having him sprain his ankle, because this team is just absolutely garbage without him. But the Knicks are 3-7 without RJ Barrett. The Nets shoot pretty well on 1 day of rest. The Knicks shoot terribly on 1 day of rest. The Knicks are much better after a loss than they are after a win, but Brooklyn's 6-2 in the division. The Knicks are 3-1 against the spread as favorites in the division. There are things that go both ways here. I really, as much as I would love to say put a play on the Knicks, if the line was 4.5 the other way, I'd say sure. But I really don't. I think this is another really close game between these two teams. But I also don't like taking 4.5, not only because it's against the Knicks on the plus side, but also because free throws could easily swing that line. So right. I am staying away from this one as well, as much as it hurts me to say. I will be watching from a fan standpoint, which is going to be painful enough.
It might be. You never know. It's the Nets. They could get a blowout. But, yeah, this is one I actually – wish that I had done more analysis earlier, because this line opened at 6.5, I believe. And if it was still 6.5, I would probably take Brooklyn here plus 6.5. 4.5, I'm less confident in. Some of the reason for that is I actually do think it's going to help Brooklyn quite a bit to have Andre Drummond in the middle. Not that he's as dominant as he used to be, but he does rebound a lot. He does play decent interior defense. He actually can score a little bit too. And they've been so lacking without Harden and Durant and all these people. So I think it helps them. Seth Curry as well. He definitely can score. So it's almost like in this lineup now they have actually a few real NBA players, not like the whole lineup, but it's a little bit better.
It's just also a weird matchup. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're
just a weird matchup. Like the Nets own the backcourt matchup here with Patty Mills and Seth Curry against Kemba and Quentin Grimes.
Yeah.
The Knicks own the front court matchup really with Julius Randle and Mitchell Robinson against, what is it going to be? Kessler, Edwards, and
Drummond.
And yep. Is Drummond even starting?
They have him starting on Roto.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's what I use. So yeah, Kessler, Edwards, and Drummond. I still give the advantage to the Knicks there in the front court. So then it's just a really weird, which one plays out better, which one wins.
Right.
I don't really know.
And that's where I think I could see it being close, like you said. The other thing just that's of interest to me, and if you have a little take on why this is, I'd be interested. But the Knicks automatically for me were a team where I thought, okay, this is a team that's going to play good defense. The question is going to be, can they score or not? And now it's like it's totally flipped. In the last 10, they're allowing 116.9 points per game, 46.8% field goal percentage, 34.5% three. Let's see. I guess that's the main numbers I have for that. But it feels like they're playing better on offense and scoring some more points, but it's like all of a sudden they can't play any defense when they had that stretch where they were super dominant, especially at home. So I don't know what's going on. With that change.
There are a couple reasons for that. I mean, first of all, looking at the change from last year to this year, I mean, with the change in personnel from Peyton and Bullock to Walker and Fournier / Walker, Grimes and Fournier, whatever you want to do with it, that traded some defense for offense right there. And the backcourt, you'll notice the Knicks are going to struggle against dominant guards. Dominant guards are dominant, but like any guard that has playmaking skill and a decent 3-point shot is going to play very, very well against the New York Knicks. And it's kind of like a top-down thing from there. When the guard breaks into the paint often, then you have to bring people onto him. That opens up other people. But what I've really contributed to are two factors. Number one is a lack of effort from our key players. Julius Randle, if you watch him on the court, does not try all the time. And whether that's because Thibodeau plays him too many minutes or because he's lost faith in the team or he's trying to conserve energy, I don't know what it is. But we all have plays where he's just standing around watching someone jump in front of him for a rebound and a putback layup, or, we won't rotate as much because if in a rotation, if one guy's not rotating, the whole thing gets thrown off. And I'm not blaming it on one guy per se, because we also have guys like Kemba Walker out there who have clearly statistically made the team a worse defensive team when he's on the court. So It's not entirely to blame on one person. The other thing I'd say is that I haven't looked at it, but I would guess that the first half defense numbers for the Knicks are much better than the second half defense numbers for the Knicks. Tom Thibodeau really needs to work on his halftime adjustments. We're getting outworked in the second half by a lot of teams, by a lot of inferior teams. That's why you see the Knicks blowing all these big leads. We blew the 20-point lead to the Lakers. We blew a 20-point lead to the Blazers, who had 9 guys on the team. We blew a 15-point lead or whatever it was to the Thunder. These are not coincidental games. This is a pattern of going up in the first half with good offense and good defense and blowing it in the second with bad versions of both. So I really think that it's partially due to a lack of effort when things get bad. Like when teams go on their runs, the Knicks don't really seem to have that spark in them to stop the run. And they go, and their shot selection is very, very poor when they try to stop a run. It's a lot of isolation, step back jumpers, low percentage shots. But defensively, I definitely say it's the adjustments, because Tom Thibodeau thinks we can come out in the second half like we came out in the first half, while other teams are changing their offensive game plan for the way we're defending them. And that gives them a lot more open threes when they make the extra pass or when they find out Julius Randle isn't rotating.
Yeah. So, based off that too, another thing that you might look at is, depending on where it's at halftime, a second half bet potentially.
Absolutely.
Too. Yeah, I'll just say to wrap this one up, and then we'll move on to the next. But again, like this one, just to say again, where I personally don't see tons of value, I lined this as 113-110 Knicks. So, and the spread's 4.5, and it's 217. Like, it's just not very. So I would say it's about right from my vantage point. So, not much interest in making a play on it.
Listen, if they can get a win, I'll be happy. I don't need anything betting wise. Just please win a game. Please win a game.
Get that Knicks win. We'll hope for that for you. So. All right, next one up. Man, we got a lopsided matchup here. The Pistons going to the Celtics. The Celtics are on a back-to-back. This is one of those larger spreads you and I were talking about before we came on. Boston minus 12.5. Total is 212.5 here. What do you think happens on the back-to-back for the Celtics here?
I made the mistake yesterday of finally fading the Celtics. I had a bad day yesterday is what I'm concluding here with our first couple of conversations.
I did 2 days ago, so.
Yeah. Basically, Boston is just, I mean, we talked about it last time with the way that their team has changed under Ime Udoka since January 1st. They have been so good in the weirdest situations too. And that kind of what plays into what I want to talk about here, which is how good Boston has been on no rest, because it's very odd. I mean, their defense, I don't have to speak to. You and I both
Right.
know that they have the best defense in the league by 4 points defensive efficiency wise. They give up their defensive efficiency rating is 100.4 since January 1st, which is absurd.
Yeah, it is.
Dallas's is the next best at 104.2, so it's 3.8 points better. They also score. Before I go into that, in their 6 games that they've had 3 games in 4 days and they're on the back end of the back-to-back at the end of that, they've won 5 of those. So they have a pretty good winning percentage. They score the 3rd most points in the league on no rest, with the 3rd highest field goal percentage and the 3rd highest 3-point percentage. Very consistent across the board. Detroit has lost 8 straight games. 6 of those games have been by double digits. Boston's won 4 of their last 5 by double digits, and the Celtics are regularly holding teams that are having struggles in scoring, bottom 10 teams in scoring, to under 100 points. I like Boston minus 12.5. I also like under 212.5 here, as Boston really, I don't imagine them needing to get that much done to get this win. I think their defense is what they rely on in the back end of these back-to-backs, which is why they have success. I could see the Pistons being held under 90 points here.
Yeah, I think so too. I do think it hurts them a little that Smart and Robert Williams are likely out. That's not official yet, but Smart, I think I saw, is doubtful now.
Definitely,
so,
yeah.
But the reality is they've played okay when 1 or 2 guys sit out. Like, they have the people to step in and still be strong on defense.
Well, Williams was out yesterday, and Smart got hurt early in the second quarter, I believe. And
yeah,
they still
he sprained
played
his ankle and came out. Yeah, when I was watching. So yeah, I agree that they can continue to be good. Detroit away from home here recently, they scored 133 against Sacramento. But other than that, they've been under 100 in 3 out of 8. And then they had a 101, 103, or no, that's out of 7. So they just haven't been scoring much. And I think that absolutely is likely to continue against a defense that's just been so stingy here. Detroit away from home is allowing teams to score quite a bit too. They have a 103, a 102 in their last 7, but 5 games out of the last 8 over 116. So they're giving up a lot of points, and Boston's been scoring better. You talked about Boston's defensive rating since the beginning of January. Last 15 games, it's even better. 97.2 defensive rating in the last 15 games.
I mean, that's unheard of.
It's insane. The Warriors had a little stretch at the very beginning of the year at home where I think they were under 100, but it wasn't that low. So, so Boston's just crushing people defensively right now. And Detroit's one of those teams that if they can't get some easy buckets and open looks, they just struggle so much to score. So I'm with you on the likelihood of them not scoring much here. One of the plays that I'm thinking about here is taking Detroit's team total under and Boston's team total over, because I do think that the spread is pretty good. But I also think if I had to bet, I would bet Detroit doesn't score, 98 points or whatever the team total is going to be. And I think Boston has a chance to put up 115 again. That's my only concern with the under is, does Boston score too much? But I do like the under as well.
Well, I was thinking about that when I was talking about it, but my thought process here is if I think Detroit's scoring under 90 points, let's say they score 90, Boston can score 120 and that game still goes under.
And you're still good. Totally.
So,
I agree.
So I really think this is not as much an indictment. This under is not an indictment on the Celtics offense as it is both praising their defense and an indictment on the Pistons offense.
Totally.
Like I could see them winning 2 straight games by 40 points. That's not out of the realm of possibility here.
Yeah, they just did it. We'll see if it's just crazy to see them up 30 in the 25 in the first half or 30.
Oh my God. I thought it was a joke. I was in a class and I was like, I thought Google was glitching with the scores.
Yeah. I keep waiting for Boston to falter. Like, I did bet them yesterday, but part of me is like, is this the game where it falls apart? And then I'm like, nope, guess not.
Looking at my notes, like, I really should have taken Boston, but I just thought like it has to.
Right, you feel like it has to fall. And I mean,
it's without Robert Williams too, and Embiid was so good in that stretch before that. I was just work from the inside out.
Yeah, and it is the NBA. Like we always say this, of course anything can happen any night. Like Detroit could win somehow, but like this just feels like a really strong spot with the way these two teams play and their numbers lately. So yeah, spread and under for you. I like the under, but also I'm thinking about the Pistons under and Celtics over potentially. So
yeah, I like those as well.
all right, next up we got the Wizards at the Pacers. Man, as we're going through this, I'm like, there's a lot of shitty games on the docket today.
We said it was a big slate. We never said it was a good slate.
That's right. And we will get to a few good ones here, but so Washington -1, 226.5 total.
Yeah, a couple things I want to point out. The overs hit the last 6 times these teams have played. Indy's lost 7 straight games, but they've also competed well over the last 3. They've had tough opponents. Their over has hit in 4 straight games. Indy allows the least 3-pointers made per game on 0 days of rest and under 30% from 3. And Washington is the second worst 3-point percentage on 1 day of rest. So that's like the one thing I see going for Indy. And based on that, I thought I was going to lean Indy for this game, but the rest of this doesn't really look for good for them at all. I mean, first of all, we have another situation where they have the backcourt advantage and Washington has the front court advantage. Washington starts Neto and Kispert right now at the 1 and 2. They're facing against Halliburton and Hield. That's obviously not beneficial. But on the front court side, Washington has Kuzma and Bryant, I believe, and they're facing. That's not even like I'm not even saying they're that good, but Jalen Smith and Goga Bitadze have to be the worst defensive pairing of players to start on a team this year. And they're going to get better, obviously. They're both young, but like, oh my goodness. India is the second worst defense in the league since January 1st. They're also 12 and 24 against the spread versus the East. The over is 12 and 4 when Indy's at home. When India's home favorites, 22 and 15 when they play other East Conference teams, and 27 and 19 against non-division opponents. Washington scores the 3rd most points in the paint per game in the league. Indy is 27th in points in the paint allowed per game and has been absolutely abysmal in that category since Miles Turner got injured and trading Sabonis. Pick and roll game should be really easy for Washington, as well as the pick and pop against Smith and Bitadze. And I really think that's the center. Like, you can look a lot of different ways with NBA games, but I like to try to see like what's the most likely way that this game is going to go based on how the teams play. And if I'm the Wizards, all I have to do is run pick and roll plays almost every single set because Jalen Smith and Goga Bitadze can't guard it. And it's one of the easiest sets to run, even for simple backcourts like Raul Neto and Kispert. They still have KCP and Kuzma. Kuzma's been playing incredibly well, and he gets to face Jalen Smith, who I understand he was facing Giannis last game, but he did give up 50, 14, and whatever.
Yeah.
So he's not necessarily in the best stretch. Indy's really limping into this All-Star game while Washington's trying to get their momentum back and keep themselves in this play-in hunt, even without Bradley Beal. They want to keep themselves competitive so they can give time for Porzingis. I almost said Porzing bitch because I hate him so much, but Porzingis.
You just did.
Yeah, well, I said Porzingis, and it just didn't. I had to explain.
That's
myself.
Why it came out that way. I got you.
But they're waiting for him to come back. So obviously they want to keep themselves afloat. I just see this as a good spot for Washington, and I really don't like. I don't see where the defense is for the Pacers, whereas I understand that the offensive, like Halliburton and Hield can only take you so far. You know what I mean? Because besides that, they have O'Shea Brissett, Jalen Smith, Goga Bitadze, Dwayne Washington, Lance Stevenson, Terry Taylor, Tristan Thompson, and Kiefer Sykes. The offense, I don't know why their team their team total is at 113. I would also like to look at that under because even if both Halliburton and Hield score 25, I mean, I don't know how we get 80 points from the rest of that roster. And I know they're NBA players; they're going to play NBA level basketball, but at the same time, I think Washington's a good shout here at -110. I like it. I like the value. I think they've looked better in their last couple of games than they did the bad stretch before that. And this should be a game that they can kind of take into the All-Star break and hopefully have something to look forward to at the other side.
Yeah, you make a great case, man. So I actually come into this being a little bit on the other side, but I think the case you made about Indy's defense is a strong one. And their offense to some extent too. So when I look at this, I actually shrink it down even more because they've played 3 games since that trade. And not that nothing before that plays into it, but it's all been tons of points. I mean, they scored 113, 120, and 119, but they gave up 120, 129, and 128, right? Like you said, no defense.
So yeah, even if they score that 113.
Right. So I think here's what I would say though, for me is you are right about the front court, the potential problems in the front court for Indiana against Washington. But I think Washington sometimes just beats themselves. Like I think they're a really bad team. And I think if Kuzma doesn't get it going, especially since the trade, now they've lost Dinwiddie, who is a decent player. I know Neto can put up some points sometimes, but I don't think he's a very good point guard overall. Kispert can be, I mean, all these guys can be okay, but I don't expect any of them to be done. Kuzma to me is the X factor. If Kuzma gets off and is hot, he can carry them to victory by himself. Aside from that, I would look at the talent across the board as somewhat even. And I think Indiana has played better than you'd expect with all of the injuries that they have in these recent games, other than on defense. So I just think this is like a close game. And I have to admit right now, like part of it is I don't like Washington. One other thing that I will One other thing I will throw in is like I looked back at when Washington plays really bad defenses, which is like bottom 6 or 7 in the league. And I mean, they do have a 122, a 118. This is like the last 8 games, but they're around 110 most of the time. And to me, if they score 110 or 112 in this game, I think it's really close. And I think Indiana probably wins. Like I think Indiana can get back up to that 115 range. So I don't feel convicted about it. But some of the trends point toward Indiana too, which again, how much do you put into that when the roster is just all turned over? But
yeah, that's just it for me is like, how many points can Indiana really generate with that lackluster defense, and will it be enough? I mean, just looking at that, I mean, let's say you get 25 each from Halliburton and Hield, and then your third leading scorer is Lance Stevenson off the bench. Let's give him 15. So that's, I mean, what is that? That's 65 points. O'Shea, Brissett, Jalen Smith, Batadze, Washington, Taylor, Thompson, and Sykes. I got to imagine you combine their points per game right now. It adds up to what, 20? Maybe. Like these are rough estimations, obviously. I'm trying to think to myself. I actually probably like the under in this game the more I talk about it because of, the lack of scorers on both sides. The only issue is, can I trust myself to take it under in a game where the Indiana Pacers are playing right now? The answer is probably no. Right. In that case, I kind of just look at the other side. But there's definitely a case to be made with Washington being as bad as they are right now. It's definitely not a good look by any means. I'm in Washington, D.C. right now. Tickets are like $8 a pop. I swear it costs more to get a sandwich in the city.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, you make a great. I'm just going back and looking at some of the box scores, and I mean, Hield scored like 34 last game. That's not likely to happen again. But Brissett scored 22 a couple games ago. Jalen Smith scored 17. It's got to be a total.
Jalen Smith can score 17. So, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah. So anyway, probably not a game either of us feel the most strongly.
Definitely not my best bet of the day.
Yeah, totally. All right, let's move on to the Kings at the Bulls. Chicago -5, 232.5. Another game and another team that had the big trade with the Pacers.
Yeah, another game I don't have too much on. The trends I will say, the overs hit in 3 of the 4 matchups between these two teams in the last 3 seasons. The overs 12-10-1 when Chicago's home favorites, 11-8-1 when Sacramento's road dogs, and 13-8-1 when Chicago faces the Western Conference. And both teams have bottom 5 defensive ratings since January 1st. Every time we talk about the Bulls on the show, I always feel like I have to mention how much worse they've been defensively since they lost Lonzo Ball and Alex Caruso. Those two are really their defensive backcourt. They're their lockdown guys on the other team's best guards. And they're both 6'3 plus. They can both, or 6'2 plus at least. I know Lonzo's 6'5. Caruso might be 6'4, 6'3, maybe, probably not. But still, they both guard sometimes the best player on the other team from 1 through 3, especially now without Zach LaVine tonight as well. I really do like the over. I think losing Zach LaVine takes some points off of the total. I think this normally would be around 235. But Chicago has proven themselves to be able to score regardless. Sacramento's proven themselves to be able to score regardless. The only thing these two teams can't do each is defend. So I especially like it after the trade because Sabonis is playing starting center now. So that means we have two starting centers that are absolute turnstiles on defense that are also absolute bucket machines on offense. So I really do like the over at 232.5. That's my only play on this game. I don't like a side.
Okay. Yeah, I like the over too. And just a few more things to fill in. Again, this is a game where I look at the last three just because of the trade that happened for Sacramento. They had two really good offensive games and one poor one. In the one that was poor, they shot 34.3% from field goal range and 25.7% from 3-point range.
And they tricked me with the first two games into betting on them on the third.
So they were over 50 in the first two from field goal range and over 40 from 3-point range. Now, they may not be that high, but I also don't think they'll be as low as that bad game was. I think they just had a crappy offensive game. They had 12 assists in that game, too, where they had 27 and 32 in the ones where they played better. So Chicago, like you said, they are scoring a ton, but they're not really stopping anyone. They're allowing 116 points a game in their last 10. Allowed 114 or more in 7 of the last 10. But at the same time, they've scored 120 or more in 7 of the last 10, and it really hasn't mattered when one guy has been out. They have enough weapons on offense that they just don't need everyone to be there. The other thing that stuck out to me, 121.3 offensive rating in their last 7 games at home and 121.7 their last 7 with 1 day of rest. So both of those spots, I mean, you get an offensive rating over 120. That's just killing it. So
looks good.
Yeah, so I think this game, I had the total for me around 239, and I think you make a good point. We probably get a little bit of a break because Levine isn't playing, but I don't think it really matters too much.
Kobe White and Ayo Dosunmu can both score.
Yep, they sure can. So yeah, I like the over in this game as well. I actually do like Chicago a little bit. I
lean that way.
-8 here, but yeah, the total I like better than the spread.
Yeah. Usually when I'm looking at like my implied spreads versus what I have on Vegas, 3 is like the minimum that I'm looking for with the differential. So it's not usually a huge play, but I do like getting that little edge from Vegas for sure.
Yeah. All right, good. Well, I think that's probably the play we've agreed on the most to this point is that over for Kings and Bulls. Yep. All right, next one could be a good game, or a bunch of people could sit out. But Raptors at Timberwolves, Toronto -1.5. Believe they were +1.5 when this started today, and it swung probably because of the Anthony Edwards news that it's a good chance he's not playing, but actually a decent chance Van Vliet won't play as well. 227.5 total.
Yeah, this one's confusing. Toronto has won 3 of the last 4 meetings between these two teams, but there's a lot of early sharp money on Minnesota. It's unlikely. Listen, I know Edwards is questionable, but he sprained his ankle last night. I would say it's or whatever. Maybe it was 2 nights ago, but no, last night. Yeah, I would say it's unlikely that he plays today. I've sprained an ankle before, and I'm not an NBA player or anything, but it was pretty tough to walk the next day.
Yeah.
I can't imagine playing basketball on it. Minnesota has been so freaking good offensively since January 1st. They're the best team in the league with the offensive rating since January 1st. But defensively, on no rest, they've been terrible. They allow 117 points per game on 48% shooting from the field, 38% shooting from 3. Toronto allows the second best 3-point percentage on 1 day of rest, and Minnesota. I like that, actually. Yeah. Minnesota scores 114 points per game on no rest on a lot of 3-point attempts. So there's that danger there for Toronto where they give up a lot of threes. Minnesota likes to rain the threes. This could be a poor matchup for them. Both teams are in the top 10 of offensive rating since January 1st. Toronto's 5-1 against the spread on the road in the last 10. But there's a lot of reverse line movement on Minnesota. Let me check to get the exact numbers. Yeah, even with the line is barely moved with 81% of the current public money on Toronto's money line. And if I look at the numbers from earlier today, 31% of the Oh, yeah, sorry. 30% of the handle on Minnesota, 59% of the bets, and then it swapped completely on the money line. So because the handle is -1.5, so obviously people are thinking more, forget the juice. I'll take the juice, give me the money line. But I really just think it's a very, very good spot for Karl Anthony Towns in specific. In the month of February alone, Toronto's given up huge games to all three of Bam Adebayo, Nikola Jokic, and Nikola Vucevic. Three guys who can score, three centers that score and distribute on all levels, just like Karl Anthony Towns. And Nick Nurse even admitted that they've had a big problem with playmaking centers and saying that they're going to possibly make some lineup switches. No Anthony Edwards does concern me, but Minnesota being so good offensively recently and the fact that they have a lot of depth. I mean, Jalen Noel's been playing really well as a backup guard and forward, so I could see him stepping up in Edwards' absence. Same thing with McDaniels. Same thing with Taurean Prince, who apparently they wanted to get into the game the other night but didn't. So he's apparently really upset about that. We'll see if he has like a little bit of a I'm never gonna say a Taurean Prince game, but maybe this is a game where the role players step up for the T-Wolves. And I think that's what the spot is here. I like Minnesota, even though everything is this is one of those picks where everything's telling me to go Toronto, but I'm going Minnesota. And I'm doing it because of a couple things, including the 3-point shooting, including the offensive rating, including Toronto struggling against centers recently, and including that I don't necessarily believe that their defensive numbers are as bad as they seem. I mean, if you look at who they've played on 3 and 4 back-to-backs on those no days of rest schedules, they've actually been very unfortunate with teams and offensive rating that they've played. The teams they've played on those games have usually been very high in offensive rating. So I actually look for the T-Wolves to see a little bit of positive regression to the mean here defensively, and hopefully the offense stays just as potent without Anthony Edwards. And I don't know as much about Fred VanVleet's injury. I've seen he's just questionable. But
he
if
didn't
he
go through shoot around today.
He didn't go through shoot around. Let me do a really quick numbers check on.
Dude,
Raptors.
I got numbers for with and without Edwards and VanVleet.
Perfect. Yeah. So jump into it.
Yeah. So, I mean, I didn't do every number, but it's actually interesting with VanVleet. Without VanVleet, the Raptors score almost 9 more points a game when he's out, but they give up 15 more. 105.46 with VanVleet in, 121.5 with him out. So it's one of those things you don't expect because you think, of course, their offense is better with VanVleet, and it probably is.
Wouldn't think he's the defensive mastermind there.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, purely by the numbers, it's score more but give up more.
And maybe that has something to do with the pace. I don't know.
Good.
But I also know that they are 2 and 4 without him. So and they get under 40 rebounds per game in those games. I'm not sure. Yeah, it probably has nothing to do with him, but maybe that does speak a little bit more to their defense and not really giving up as many missed baskets, so not as many opportunities for rebounds. But I do think their defense is suspect here in this spot, and Minnesota's offense is in such a good, groove going into the All-Star break that I don't know. I think it's a good spot for them at home here, even though they're on the worst rest schedule.
All right, it's good. I'm going to try to make the case for the other side now, and we'll see who convinces who. You actually got me thinking. I got Toronto plus 105 earlier, and I just went and looked, and I'm like, well, Minnesota's plus 115. Maybe I should just go ahead and
take the profit
that out and get the small little profit, But let me just share why I went with Toronto initially this morning. So Toronto had been on a tear, right? I don't even remember how many wins in a row they had.
6 or 7, I think.
6 or 7, right? So a good run. Their last game feels like a little bit of an outlier to me. They had 8 assists. I mean, they haven't been that low in assists in forever. They shot 30.5% from field goal range. They shot 23.5% from 3-point range against a bad defensive team. And to your point, Minnesota may not be as bad as all the numbers, but they're not a good defensive team.
No.
I just don't see Toronto coming out and being that bad on offense again. And I actually think because maybe there's some recency bias where it's like, oh, Toronto was so terrible that might affect people a little bit when they think about this game because it was so bad in the last one. Minnesota's lost 3 straight on the back end of a back-to-back. The totals were super high in those games. So that's the other thing is the total here, but 251, 258, and 256. on the back end of back-to-backs for Minnesota. I had a number here. Oh, their defensive rating in their last 3 on the back end of back-to-backs was 130.7. So Minnesota's been really bad recently on the back end of back-to-backs on defense. And then the other thing is, like, I didn't know this at the time, but if Edwards is out, we talked about Van Vliet. Minnesota scores about 9 more points a game when he's in. They only score 105.8 this year with him out. And I will say most of those games were probably a little bit earlier in the season when they weren't rolling on offense the way they were now. And I think
that is definitely interesting.
Yeah, so I think they have people who can step in for him to some extent, but I do think it could make an impact. And then they actually allow less points without him as well. So they allow 112.5 when he's in, 106.3 when he's out. So it feels like things move in both ways to me in terms of the total. I do think if I had to pick it, I still probably like the over here because I think both these teams are capable of 120. Whether they do it or not, we'll see. And then I just think, I think Toronto and Minnesota have both been pretty hot, but I just think Toronto played such a bad game last game that they come out stronger here and keep it close. But you've also got me thinking I might just play the plus money on both sides.
Well, you've also got me thinking that I don't know. It's a tough one to evaluate because I don't trust Minnesota defensively in the slightest. And if they're not able to score without Anthony Edwards, I do seriously question it. So I'm going to look a little more into this game after this conversation.
I think I might do that too.
And then we can talk a little bit more privately about how we may have switched our
That's
opinions.
right. That's right. Maybe we'll end up on the same side eventually. So
I'm really not sure anymore.
Yeah, I feel the same. And I'm a Timberwolves fan, man. Like I want him to win. So
I like him, and I really
so
I like Anthony Edwards a lot, but if he can't play.
The other thing that I will say with Minnesota, just like, and I don't have the numbers to back this up, but just watching them is they feel like a team where when everybody's healthy, I actually think they can be competitive with anyone in the league when everyone's healthy. But they do feel like a team that when one of their key players goes out, it like affects them more than it affects most teams. Like when D'Angelo Russell was out, it's not that his numbers are so phenomenal, but when he was out, they just couldn't win. And I think that if Towns or Edwards is out, I just think it has a significant impact on this team. So that is something to watch for me.
So I just did a little quick stat news search because I was interested in D'Angelo Russell's game log when Anthony Edwards doesn't play.
Okay.
It's interesting. You'd think he scores more points, but he doesn't. He actually shoots. He's his most points scored in one of those games is 22, which is actually against Dallas. And he's scored under 20 in the other 3 games. He's shot under 50% in 3 of those 4 games, and he's turned the ball over at least 3 times in 3 of those 4 games. So it seems like D'Angelo Russell kind of does a little more chucking and not as much. Although I will say he has had over 10 assists in 2 of those games. So he does he does do some playmaking.
Yeah.
But if he can't score either without Anthony Edwards, I'm really starting to flip.
Then it's on Towns,
tell you that.
Right?
Then
like you said.
Yeah. Then it's just on Towns.
Yeah.
And I'm really starting to flip then.
Yeah. Well, that's good stuff. Everybody can take that and do what they want with it.
Listen,
I
am someone that likes to keep my mind open, and when I hear things that change it, I will change it.
Me too. All right, let's keep moving on to the next one here. Spurs at the Thunder. And I will say probably, I don't know if you're doing this as well, but if you want to see if anything changes, you can check things out on Twitter, probably post some thoughts there as the day goes along on some of this stuff. So
yeah.
All right, Spurs at Thunder, San Antonio -8. Fairly big number, 218 as the total. What do you think?
Snooze fest.
Yeah.
The under has hit 5 straight games between these two teams. No SGA or Dort. OKC shoots terribly on the day of rest. But also OKC is really, 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 really good against the spread. Additionally, they're really good against the spread after a win and at home and in games against their division. They also have had a top 10 defense since January 1st, inexplicably. I don't know how. I don't know why, but they do. They're also 4-1 against the spread in their division, going back to that. So I don't have too much on this game. I don't like it. I don't like that I'm taking the Thunder +8, but I am, because I don't
Fair
think
enough.
I just don't think the Spurs are 8 points better. And I think that the defense of the Thunder should be able to keep this a closer game. But that being said, it's probably my smallest play tonight.
Okay. Great. So I don't blame you for not liking this game. So last game, my favorite streak in the NBA got ruined. And I'm sorry to bring this up because I know it was the Knicks, and I'm not doing it to rub it in. I promise.
No, I know what you're gonna say,
It's a
because it's
streak
my
I've been
favorite
watching.
streak too.
So yeah. So Oklahoma City had scored 104 or less in every game without Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and I believe it was up to 12 games where that had happened. And then in the 13th, they went and scored a bunch of points against the Knicks, so it ruined that streak.
Wow, who
But
could have guessed the Knicks were the team?
who would
to break
have
that
guessed?
one?
That's what I'm saying about their defense lately, man. I don't know what's up, but
Abysmal. Josh Giddey shot 4 or 4 from 3. I don't want to hear it.
right. So, but so that's a good example. One of the things that I would look at here is going back to the team total under for the Thunder. When the Thunder have won games or covered the spread, a lot of times it's because they don't score a lot, but they keep the other team from scoring very much too. And I definitely think that could happen here. Now, you could say the Spurs have a terrible defense. Why would you bet a team total under against the Spurs? But if you go back and look in 14 of Oklahoma City's last 15 games, they've scored 100 or 3 and less. And here's some of the defenses they did it against: Chicago, Sacramento, Portland, Indiana, Charlotte, and San Antonio themselves. All
I probably
those
had
games.
the over in most of this.
Right, exactly. You think it should be, right? And again, I don't ever like to bet a team total under against the Spurs, but I just think the Thunder have a large sample size. Dort is out. Ty Jerome is out, not a big deal, but Gilgeous-Alexander's out. Kendrick Williams. So they have Giddey. They have Man, who chucks and like sometimes hit and sometimes doesn't. They have Baisley.
He did against the Knicks.
But it is almost like you said for the Pacers of like, if Giddey doesn't go off, where is the scoring coming from here to get them up to that number? So this is a game where probably my favorite bet is the Thunder team total under, possibly the under in general, because like you said, they have played pretty good defense. The one thing that might keep me off that is that San Antonio has been better on the road in their last 15, scoring 117.5 points a game, 113.7 at home. So, I mean, whatever, they maybe didn't play as good of defenses as the Thunder have been, but I think San Antonio is a team that really is capable of putting up a pretty decent number because DeJounte Murray creates. Their shooters are healthy right now. He kicks out. If they're hitting the 3-point shot, I think that they can score a decent number. So
something else I like in this game, I hate to cut you off. Go ahead. More thing. The Thunder are actually really bad. They're very good against point guards defensively, but one thing they are not good against is point guard assists. They give up, I think, let me check to make sure I have this right, but yeah, the second most assists per game to point guards. So I would definitely give a look to that DeJounte Murray assist prop, whatever it is, probably around 10. I don't care. I'd take it.
Right. I mean, he's good for that almost every night right now.
Yeah.
So I actually like the structure of this Spurs team pretty well because of the shooters they have around him. I think 8 is too wide for me to bet it. Like, if you forced me to pick a side, I would actually take the Spurs -8 in this spot, but I'm not going to bet it just because I would want it to be like -4 or 3.5 for me to be interested in it. But that total under potentially, and then I'm definitely going to look at the Thunder's team total under as well. So that's what I got there. Next game up, we go to the Blazers against the Grizzlies. Memphis -11.5, 229.5.
I'm done with the Blazers. I'm not looking.
Yeah?
No, I can't do it. It doesn't make sense, man. It doesn't. It really doesn't make any sense. And I can't do it anymore because this game I think the Grizzlies should win this game by 65 points. And
that'd be a good alt line right there, man.
I'm sure as soon as I press that button, they lose this game. Like, I don't know what, it doesn't make any sense. Who did Portland beat recently? They beat Milwaukee.
Yep.
How the hell did they beat Milwaukee? They beat Milwaukee by like 18.
2 nights ago. Yep.
They beat the Knicks, which okay, whatever. They beat the Lakers too. I mean, And they're doing this all with 9 guys on their team. So I have no idea how to evaluate this team. I'm not ashamed to say it because I don't get it. So I'm fading Portland. I'm fading all games involving Portland until I understand something about their roster.
All right, fair enough, man.
That's it. That's it for me.
Yeah, so I likewise am surprised at how well Portland has been doing. Not something that you would expect. I do think that they got stabilized a little bit having Josh Hart in the lineup. I'm not saying Josh Hart is an amazing player, but I do think he's a decent
underrated
player. Yeah, he's underrated. He has a lot of experience. So I think that's a little bit stabilizing for them probably. All of a sudden, they're playing Justice Winslow a ton of minutes at power forward. But Nurkic has played well. And then I think Simons is up and down is the thing. When Simons is on, they do have the potential to score pretty well. When he's off, they're not going to. So he's just inconsistent. I will say, like, Memphis has just been absolutely crushing. Ja Morant is a game time decision tonight, so that's worth watching. But the reality is Memphis is good even when he doesn't play. When you go look at how they've been doing on offense, their last 6 games have all been over 120 points. The 4 before that were like 119, 118, 115. So, like, this is a team that's coming out and putting up 120 points on a daily basis. And that's probably reflected in the line here, but they've been pretty good on defense, holding teams under 110 most of the time, not every time. They've won 9 of 10 games. Their only loss was to Philadelphia in overtime. And so just winning every game. Margin of victory at home has been 8.4 points over their last 15. So they're generally beating people by a good margin. Let's see what else I got here. So Portland is on a 3-game win streak, which is what you said, the Lakers, the Knicks, and the Bucks, which is crazy. They've scored 107 or more in all 3 of those. In terms of, and you put me onto this looking at points in the paint and stuff, and you brought this up when they played the Clippers, but Memphis number 1 in points in the paint. And even more so in the last 3 games. So on the season, 57.4 points a game, 62 over the last 3. And Portland is middle of the pack defending points in the paint, but they're actually 3rd in the league or 4th over their last 3 games. So maybe with the roster shakeup, they've been playing a little bit better interior defense. Portland, on the other hand, scores a lot of their points from 3-point range, number 3 in the league of percentage of points from 3. Memphis is middle of the pack defending that, but they're 2nd best in the league over their last 3 defending the 3. So yeah, like stuff pointing both ways. Who knows what Portland comes out and does? I actually lined this game as only Memphis -7. So it feels like there's some value there. But the problem for me is I believe in Memphis a lot and I don't believe in Portland very much.
Yeah.
And so it's like if the number was at a spot where it was close to what I thought it would be, I'd maybe take a shot on Memphis. The one thing I might do is take a first half shot on Memphis. They've been just destroying teams in the first half lately.
And in the first quarter.
Or the first quarter, yeah. I think if I put a bet on this game, it would be one of those 2 things.
Yeah, I might look at Memphis's first quarter as well.
Yeah, it's a good call. Yeah, and the total, I don't know what to tell you. I think it's probably about right. So
I think it's one of those games that, like, it could be Memphis could blow them. They could win like 140 to 110, or it could be like 110 to 80. And you don't really know what you're getting from either side.
Yep. It's a tough game to call because we just don't know what Portland's going to settle into being yet with this new roster. So, all right, this is one I'm not a huge fan of, but we'll talk about it anyway. Rockets at the Suns.
I got nothing. Absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. And I hate to be that guy, but like,
dude. So
at the end of the day, I'm just trying to bet smarter, not harder. And it's like some of these games are just absolutely terrible.
If you're not on the stream, you won't be able to see this on the podcast, but I usually have like half a page of notes for a game, right? Like bullet points.
Same.
This game, I have 3 lines, and one of them says, I don't even care to mess with games when the spread gets this wide. That's one of my notes.
That's actually one of my bullet points says 15.5 points. Are you really going to sit here and take this game?
Totally. So here's the only thing I have, and I'm not betting it, so I'm not recommending anyone else does either, but Phoenix against bad defenses. 132 against Orlando, 131 against Milwaukee, which they're not always a bad defense. 127 against Chicago, 115 against Atlanta. So if I wanted to take a shot, I would probably look at the Suns team total over, which is going to be at like 220 or so, around the 220 range, or 120, not
yeah.
220. Holy hell.
Wow. Best team ever.
Take the under. Take the under.
Yeah, I would hammer that.
Yeah, 120 though. So again, I don't want to bet anybody's team total at 120. But that's the only thing that I could even remotely like here, I think. So
yeah, I have nothing.
All right.
Nothing. Nada on that. And I don't feel bad about it.
It's a big slate, so we'll just jump to the next one.
Yeah.
The Jazz at the Lakers. Next to last game here, Utah minus 4.5, 226 total.
Yeah. During the NFL season, my partner and I like to do something called the don't overthink it play of the week. And those were pretty good. We ended up going 7-1 on those. And it was kind of like, you see the matchup. Sometimes you don't need to do too much. Sometimes things are just going your way with a line and you just take it. And I know that sounds kind of arbitrary and square, but let me just take it through. The Jazz haven't had their full strength lineup together in months. And now that they do, they've ripped off 6 straight wins. 4 of them were by double digits. They were also all at home, and they do have a 5-game losing streak on the road. But they were not at full strength when they were on that 5-game losing streak on the road. So I take that with a grain of salt. The Lakers are often crippled by opposing guards play, point guards and shooting guards, mostly point guards, but shooting guards as well. That favors Utah here with Mitchell and Conley. The Lakers have lost 3 straight. LeBron's a game-time decision questionable. AD is probable, so I'm counting him in. The Jazz are 9th in points in the paint per game. The Lakers are 26th in points allowed in the paint per game this year. I really, really like Utah in this spot. I think this is a great momentum place for them to get their 7th straight win, head into the All-Star break after a lot of turmoil up and down in the beginning first half of the season. They're really starting to put it together. I think Gobert does a great job with paint defense, which should help them against Anthony Davis, and especially if it's just Anthony Davis. And the way I see it here with guys like LeBron on the injury line, when if I get him at 4.5 here and LeBron's ruled in, this line maybe moves to 4, 3.5. If LeBron is ruled out, I get crazy CLV because this line will move to 6.5, 7.5, maybe 8.5 by closing. So there are a lot of factors that point me towards the Jazz in this game, and I'm not shying away. I really think that they are one of the best teams in the league when they're at full strength. Not the best, but one of the best. And they are at full strength today with the obvious redactions of Rudy Gay and Joe Ingles. Rudy Gay being hurt, Joe Ingles being traded and hurt. So I really, really like the Jazz in this game. I like Mitchell and Conley to be the driving factors as to why, as well as Gobert's defense. And I expect the Lakers to struggle here. This is not as much numbers based as it is, I believe, in the Jazz at their full strength based. And I think at 4.5, this number is too low for a team that is at their best a top 3 team in the league in the West versus a team that is currently 8th or 9th.
And barely.
And barely 8th or 9th.
Yeah. So
with LeBron James and Anthony Davis.
Yeah, I know. So I'm going to throw a few things in and then I'll say why and how much I'm on the same side as you. So Utah, in spots where they go out on the road after 4 more games at home this year, they've done that 3 times. They're 3-0 in those games, and they've won them. The first one they won by 18, then they won by 1 against Cleveland and 6 against the Spurs. So it's not like they've totally blown the doors off everybody, but they are 3-0 in those spots. They've also played good defense lately, 104 points or less in all 6 games on this homestand. And like you said, it is at home, but still, I think as they get healthy, I 100% agree with you. We need to look almost separately at that and how they're performing as they get healthy. So even if that number isn't 104 on the road, what if it's 108? Like, I'm still okay with that. And I'll say that at the end with where I lined this game. The other big thing for me is like, Rudy Gobert is not my favorite player, but the reality is just that he makes a big difference. So with him in the lineup, they average 115.4 points per game. Without him, 109.6. So you think of him on the defensive side, but they actually average almost 6 more points a game this season when he's playing. And then on the defensive side of the ball, 105.6 with him in, 110.86 with him out. So they give up 5 more points a game. So between offense and defense, just based on the numbers, it's an 11-point swing from him being in or out. So I just think it makes a big difference, especially going up against a team that has Anthony Davis. Like, I actually think at this point in the career, Rudy's just as athletic and he's long, and I think he can play great defense on Anthony Davis. So I wrote, like you in my notes, I wrote, now that they're healthy, I think Utah probably starts rolling. And when I made this game, I made it Utah 124, LA 107. So I have this down as destruction in LA today. So I absolutely love Utah -4.5 as well.
Yeah. And one thing I'm looking at that doesn't have too much credence towards anything, but it is interesting, is Gobert and Anthony Davis's game log against Rudy Gobert.
How is it?
It's interesting. He has these one-off explosion games. Like he had one game with 42 and 12, another game with 36 and 17, another game with 43 and 14. This is all since 2014, by the way. So there's a lot.
Okay.
There's a lot of sample size here. But he's also got the majority of his games where he's got less than 30. We've got a game with 26, 21, 16, 15, 15, 20, 12, 19. So he definitely has these spots where he doesn't do as well. It's interesting to me. I'd really like to see if I can find it, his numbers when he has LeBron versus when he doesn't, but I don't think I can find that currently. I still think that even if he has a good game, it's a very, very tough matchup for the Los Angeles Lakers because of how they have to defend against these guards and they don't have the facilities to do that.
Yep. I will throw in there too. I pulled it up to look at this as well. And he does have some huge games here. The one where he scored 42 points, he shot 4 of 8 from 3-point range.
Yeah.
So 50%, not something he's normally going to do. Had 28 field goal attempts, which he could. But then the game where he had 26, the next one, he shot 81.8% from the field. I mean, just like some crazy numbers there. So I think like something in that, like high teens to low 20s feels more likely to me.
Right. And then you look at this matchup and you say, well, if the Jazz are at full strength and they're able to score that 115 that they usually score with Gobert and Mitchell on the floor, then if AD gets those high teens to low 20s, what does LeBron have to do to make this even a close game, let alone a win?
Yep. Totally. All right, we're on the same side on that one.
That's one of my
from the total, but I like Utah.
That's one of my favorite bets of the day. I'd put that in my list.
Yeah, me too. That's one I already got in on that -4.5 because, like you said, that line could move depending on the LeBron news. So,
yeah.
All right, last game of the day. We've got. That's why I got the hat on for the last game. Nuggets at Warriors. Golden State -5.5. 225.5 total.
Yeah. See, this is actually my favorite game on the slate.
All right, sweet. Let's hear it.
And I have a roommate who is a huge Golden State Warriors fan from the Bay, so he's not going to like me. Denver's won 4 out of 5.
But I will.
Yeah, you will for sure. Denver has won 4 out of their last 5 and scored 110 or more in all of those games. I've been watching Golden State because I watch them with him. We have a bunch of TVs set up here so everyone gets to watch their team. Golden State's been really bad over the last 4 games particularly, and they've been out-rebounded by 8 boards per game in those last 4 games. And part of that goes down to Kavon Looney, who I've been taking his rebound props almost every game up until these last couple weeks because Kavon Looney is one of the only players in the league that started every single game for his team, and you can see that he is worn down. I mean, you have to realize, and this is not an indictment on Kavon Looney whatsoever. It's actually praise. Kavon Looney is much younger than people think he is. He's only 25 years old. And he is in the position now where he's on a team where they're missing Wiseman and they're missing Draymond Green. So he's now put into a much larger role than he's been expected to be in. And Draymond Green is the quarterback of this defense. He directs everybody, especially the big men. And you ask James Wiseman about his first year, you see clips of Wiseman getting knowledge and lessons from Draymond Green. The same thing goes for Jonathan Kuminga right now. And so without Draymond Green on the floor, Kavon Looney is really starting to look like he's laboring and he's really tired. And I think that has a lot to do with being their being out rebounded, because without your best rebounder, who's pretty much your only rebounder right now, it's a real issue. So if you look into the matchup now, Denver's actually leapfrogged Golden State in offensive performance on one day of rest in points per game and in splits. The only bad thing about Denver right now is that they're 13-21 against the spread versus conference opponents. So they're much better against the East than versus the West. Obviously, they play the West more. Denver's offense is ranked third since January 1st. Golden State's is ranked 15th. I think that's been one of the misconceptions about Golden State recently, is that their offense has been what's been winning them games. It's actually been their defense. But I struggle to see how their defense is going to work right now against a center of Jokic's size. They give up 31, 12, and 6 to Towns last time they played a dynamic center. I think Jokic feasts with these conditions. Golden State has allowed at least 111 points in each of their last 4 games. 3 of them were against subpar offenses: the Lakers, the Clippers, the Knicks. Denver is 5-1 against the spread on the road in their last 10 games. And Denver scores a lot. I think this is a team that if they go on the offensive against Golden State early, this is not a game that Golden State can necessarily shoot themselves right back into, because Denver will continue the scoring barrage, especially if they have a lead and Jokic is the one controlling the ball and controlling the game. I really think it's going to be tough for the Warriors to establish dominance in any line of this game unless they end up shooting 50% from 3, which is obviously a possibility. But I just think that this matchup favors Denver more than it does Golden State. So I like Denver plus the 5.5 points, and I've actually sprinkled a little bit on plus 185.
Nice, man. A lot of the points that you said are ones that I had down, and I actually, as much as I like the Nuggets, and that they and the Timberwolves are the teams that I root for, people have listened to this show. Like, I really like the Warriors, and I really keep expecting them to pop. Even without Draymond, with Clay coming back, I'm like, they're going to figure it out and they're going to get working. And with Curry and Thompson on the floor and the way they both are capable of shooting, it's like, man, at some point they just got to go off. But that's
Can I throw a hot take out here really quickly?
Yeah, sure.
The Warriors are going to win the Western Conference, at least. If
I
not
actually
the entire
took a
thing.
future on them already.
If not the entire thing. Do you realize that they've only played 7 seconds with their big 3 on the floor together?
That's
and that
crazy.
was the only reason they played those 7 seconds is because Draymond Green was supposed to sit out that game, but he was like, I owe it to Klay Thompson to stay in for the tip-off. So they lost the tip-off, Draymond fouled and sat. That's the only time that they've played with those 3 together on the court. Yeah. And they weren't all healthy. So imagine, if you will, when Draymond comes back in a couple of weeks, I just want to point out that this team was 73-9 with Harrison Barnes, Sean Livingston, and Andrew Bogut. And that's not to say that those guys weren't good role players, but that is to say that they have much better role players now. Jordan Poole, Jonathan Kuminga, Otto Porter, all guys that have contributed a lot more now. This team's going to win the Western Conference and probably the whole thing if they can get healthy, if Draymond Green can get healthy. Just wanted to put that out there. This is not me putting anything on the Warriors besides their health issues being a detriment to this matchup.
That, and also I will say, just as a side thing, if you're someone who does play futures, you might want to look at what that number is on the Warriors, because it's probably not going to get better than it is now, because Draymond will come back shortly after the All-Star break, most likely, and then it'll start moving the other direction. But in terms of today's game, one of the big things I look at is I think of the Warriors as a great defensive team, and I think they will be a very good defensive team. But right now, if you look at their defensive rating over their last number of games here, 122.8 against the Clippers, 115.8 against the Lakers, 118 against the Knicks, 120.8 against Utah. Maybe that's okay. 102.6 against Oklahoma City. Okay, but I won't keep going forever. But 119, 122.3, just saying,
not a recipe for success.
Their defensive rating has been terrible. And Denver is a very good offensive team. And like you said, I think Denver is set up really well because of Jokic to be good against the Warriors specifically. And Denver hasn't been great on defense, but they've been okay. And I think right now that's about what you have to be, is okay against Golden State. So especially the Nuggets getting 5.5 here. I think if this line was closer to, I think it's maybe a close game. I mean, I don't necessarily expect the Nuggets to come out and blow them away. But yeah, at that number, I think that the Nuggets are the right side here. I had it as close to a pick 'em. And in terms of the total, I have it at 226 in how I line this game. So, or 226.5. So not much value for me on that one. But
yeah, I have this closer to a Golden State -1.5, -2.
Okay.
And I really think that the only reason that I would have them favored in this spot is because they play much better at Oracle. But I really don't think this is a good spot for them, especially against the spread. I mean, they're great free throw shooters, so I could obviously see why a smaller spread would be boosted to a larger spread because, Steph and Clay aren't going to miss their free throws. But at the same time, it's just like a very specific situation. I think the X factor here is really Wiggins. If Andrew Wiggins can be a threat to Denver, that's really, I don't know. I feel like that could be a spot for the Warriors to kind of expose the interior defense of the Nuggets and then work from the inside out and kind of start kicking out to Clay, kicking out to
Yeah.
Steph. But is that really the game plan I think they're going to go with, especially to start the game out? No. And then do I really think that if they start the game out a different way, that they're going to be able to make that adjustment against such a potent offense and get back those points? It's just a lot of question marks for me for Golden State right now, especially when you look at how they've been playing on the boards in these last couple of games. It does not suit them for a big man like Jokic, who's had like 26 double-doubles and like 10 triple-doubles or whatever the hell it is this year.
Yeah.
I mean, I think he's going to go absolutely off tonight, and I don't necessarily know how many. Here, let me find out the Nuggets record when Jokic scores 35. All right. Well, I didn't get it. I didn't get a result. So
sometimes that happens.
3-1. They're 3-1 when
Okay.
Jokic scores 35 plus. And when he scores 35 plus, he actually scores 40 per game. He scores 39.5 and averages 14.5 boards. That's kind of a stat line I could see for him tonight. And I know that's really, really high, but I mean, we're talking about Nikola Jokic here. So
yeah. So hey, the last thing, I'm actually going to go do some more looking on this. I said that I didn't like the total, but in our conversation about how the Warriors have been on defense lately, I also pulled up how the Warriors have been doing offensively. And at home, they've actually been decent, except that game against the Clippers wasn't very good.
That's what I was saying. They play a lot better in Oracle.
Yeah,
they play a lot better in Oracle.
Right, 117, 114, 126. And some of these aren't great defenses or anything, but I may check into that a little more because I think
over.
Yeah, because I think if Denver scores, 115, if Golden State comes close to that, we're going well over this total. So I think that's something I'm going to look at again.
Well, that's funny because I imagine with just looking at the line the way it is, I would imagine that the line is probably something like the implied totals are probably Golden State to score 115.25 or 115.75, and then it's like 109.75 for Denver and like 115.25 or something like that for Golden State. So it's probably very, very similar to that that 115.
115.5 for Golden State and 109.5 for man.
Yeah.
I wonder about Denver's team total over
that's
two
what
at
I'm
109.5, man. That's
pretty freaking low.
Pretty low. So,
and I mean, let's just look into these game logs real quick.
consider.
See, this is what you guys get with the breakdown. You get live new angles.
I got my second screen working now, so I can do it even better than I was doing it before.
Looking at Denver's game log, they scored under 105 against Boston, which is okay.
Well, who doesn't?
And they scored exactly 105 against New Orleans. They scored under 105 against Utah. But besides that, those were all in the last couple of weeks. But besides that, before that, they hadn't scored under 105 since January 16th when it was against Utah again. So, I mean, they're a very good scoring team, especially when you look at Golden State giving up at least 110 in the last 4 games.
Yep.
That's
I think it's worth a look for sure.
Definitely is.
So, all right, man. Well, that was a lot of work. I appreciate you putting it in. And, man, I love just talking through these games with you. It helps me get clarity on things. So,
hey, me too, man. Listen, I'm probably going to take the Raptors now.
Oh, shit. Don't do it because of me, man.
No, because seriously, because of what we've talked. No, it's not just, I mean.
Yeah.
Don't pat yourself on the back.
Oh, I'm not. No, I'm not.
I know. I'm just saying, but like the numbers without Anthony Edwards are very concerning for Minnesota.
Yeah.
And I mean, even if Karl Anthony Towns is a big game, if it's just him, I don't necessarily know how much I like that as much now. So
Yeah.
I like getting different angles on this kind of stream, and I really do like talking over this game with you. Doing it once a week is really fun for me. So
it's a lot of fun, man. Thanks for doing it. Hit them quick with where to find you, especially as you're putting stuff out during the day here.
Yeah, we've done this a couple times now. I'm just going to run through them at Source Podcast 11 on Twitter, www.sourcepodcast.com. The Source Podcast with Sam Hiller and Job Goddard, anywhere you can find podcasts. That's Apple Podcasts, that's Amazon Music, that's Spotify. And hit us in our DMs or in our email, the Source Podcast 11 at gmail.com if you got any questions or if you want to contribute anything for our website, because we're looking for some more writers recently.
Nice.
So give them that little shout out across the streams I do these days. But that's it all. That's all from me, man. It's been a great time being on here. I love talking basketball with you. I love going over the slate. I love getting new angles, new numbers. I love it all. So
man.
Next time you're available, hit me up. Let's do it again.
We'll keep doing it. Yeah,
we'll keep giving the people what they want.
Yep, absolutely. So, and I'll just say real quick, the easy way to say it for me, at NBA Attack on Twitter. Hopefully you know that. Go click in the bio, and there's
Big
links.
Tasty.
Big Tasty. That's right. There's some links to the YouTube channel, links to the podcast. And I would just say, if this is something that's good for you, if you would take like 1 minute and leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, subscribe to the YouTube channel, that just helps a lot and gives that push to keep going. It is a lot. We both have a ton of fun.
Yeah, do that for us too.
Yeah, do it for both. Exactly. Take 2 minutes.
2 minutes
do it for both. So
what's 2 minutes? I'll do 20 seconds.
Exactly. Hey, I appreciate you all tuning in. Look forward to interacting on Twitter. Have a great day, and we'll see you again soon.